They told me my bonus was reinvested into company equity, a polite way of saying we're keeping your money. 11 years of loyalty, late nights, and record-breaking efficiency, all reduced to a spreadsheet adjustment and a fake smile from the COO. I didn't argue, I documented. Because when they took my pay, they also handed me proof, the kind that could bury them quietly. If you've ever worked under someone who mistook silence for weakness, this one's for you. Subscribe, stay close, and tell me, what's the worst excuse you've ever heard for not getting paid? I wasn't hired to make noise. I was hired to make things work, and for 11 years, that's exactly what I did. While the executives played visionaries on stage, I rebuilt our logistics backbone from the ground up, routing systems, automation flows, and data pipelines that kept deliveries on time and profits climbing. My name rarely made it onto the quarterly slides, but my fingerprints were on every metric that kept the company alive. I didn't mind the quiet. Quiet gave me control. My team trusted me because I never spoke to impress. I spoke to solve. We weren't flashy, but we were reliable. And in logistics, reliability is gold. Every audit, every client review, every operations meeting came back with the same line. Sarah's team keeps this place running. But the higher we climbed, the smaller the praise got. The COO, Landon, called us support staff, as if the flow of revenue didn't start with our data accuracy. He'd breeze through the ops floor, clap someone on the shoulder, talk about synergy, and walk away before hearing the answer to his own questions. Still, I stayed patient. I'd seen executives come and go, all leaving behind the same chaos I'd quietly rebuilt. The team learned to move in rhythm with my silence. Rosa handled vendor contracts, Ben ran data audits, Nina and Leo kept the regional hubs synced. We had our friction, sure, but we respected each other's grind. Every delay fixed, every crisis contained, came down to that shared understanding. We didn't need applause, we needed results. Then came the expansion quarter, the one everyone said would define our future. New clients, new routes, record throughput. I worked 16-hour days to make sure the transition was flawless. I missed dinners, forgot birthdays, lived off cold coffee and takeout containers, but I believed it was worth it. When I saw the CFO, Pierce, nod approvingly at the revenue report, I allowed myself one small moment of satisfaction. I thought, maybe this time they'll see us. The board presentation that followed confirmed the numbers. A 42% increase in fulfillment efficiency, client retention at an all-time high, and a projected Q4 profit margin that broke every company record. Landon called it a team miracle. I didn't correct him when he credited the new leadership vision. I just smiled and moved on. What mattered was that my people would finally see the payoff. Our performance bonuses were tied to those exact figures, and I had every confirmation in writing. It wasn't arrogance, it was math. I'd built my career on precision, and the numbers didn't lie. What I didn't see then were the small edits happening behind closed doors, the CFO adjusting terminology from bonus allocation to equity alignment, HR quietly replacing the word guaranteed with discretionary in the comp document. All subtle, all legal-looking, all buried under updates no one read unless they were looking for trouble. But I wasn't looking for trouble. Not yet. I was still the quiet architect who believed that good work could speak for itself. That belief, I'd learn soon, was the first thing they'd weaponize against me. The first red flag wasn't loud. It was quiet, almost polite. The kind of change that slips past you because it feels too small to matter. Our weekly metrics meeting was rescheduled 3 times with no explanation, and when it finally happened, Landon sat across from me with a new consultant by his side, a kid who couldn't have been more than 26, all buzzwords and nervous energy. He asked if I could simplify our performance dashboards, meaning he didn't understand them. Landon smiled like it was progress. "We're streamlining communication," he said, which I knew meant dumbing it down. Then Pierce, the CFO, chimed in about realigning incentive structures. I didn't like the phrasing. It sounded like someone rewriting the rules mid-game. HR followed up a week later with what they called a routine PTO audit. I'd never seen them audit only one department before, but apparently ours was randomly selected. My people started whispering. Rosa found that her project code had been reassigned to another team. Ben said the finance portal suddenly blocked him from seeing his bonus projections. I told them to stay calm, that we'd clarify it. I wanted to believe it was a clerical mess, not sabotage. Still, the air in the office changed. Conversation stopped when I walked by. The smiles felt thinner. I'd seen this before, years ago, when a different leader tried to phase out senior staff without saying the words. First, they isolate your data. Then they question your relevance. Finally, they restructure. I'd trained myself not to flinch at those patterns, but when I saw Mira from HR avoid eye contact in the hallway, I felt that old chill again. She'd been friendly once. Now she looked through me like I was a memo she'd already filed away. One night, I stayed late to finish the quarterly logistics review. The office was dark except for the glow of my monitor. I pulled up the latest comp document in our internal system, just to be sure, and there it was. The update I hadn't approved. A new clause buried in Section 3B. Bonuses are subject to executive discretion based on company-wide equity. Alignment. The timestamp showed it had been modified by Pierce's assistant 3 days ago. No announcement, no signature, just slipped in under the radar. I saved a screenshot and emailed it to myself. Subject line, change 3B. Then I kept working because that's what professionals do. We fix problems. But as I sat there watching the cursor blink, I realized this wasn't a problem I could fix with logic or performance. This was premeditated erosion. The next morning, Landon called a check-in. His tone was casual, but the agenda wasn't. "We're reviewing department efficiency," he said, "and I'd like to see how your team's functions overlap with biz dev." Translation: he was setting the stage for cuts. I asked if this was part of the budget review. He smiled that politician's smile and said, "Just exploratory." I'd heard that word before. Exploratory was corporate code for inevitable. After the meeting, Rosa stopped by my desk. "You ever get the feeling they're preparing something?" she asked. I wanted to lie, to say no, but her eyes were too sharp for that. "Just stay steady," I said instead. "Document everything." She nodded, understanding without question. That night, I started doing the same. Every Slack message, every altered file, every sudden policy clarification went into a folder named Ops Integrity. I didn't know what I was building yet. A defense, a weapon, maybe both. What I did know was this. They'd started a quiet war, and I was already weeks ahead of them. The announcement came on a Friday, the kind of day when everyone's half distracted and just trying to make it to the weekend. I remember the smell of burned coffee in the break room, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the jittery optimism floating through the floor, because people were whispering that bonuses were coming. After all, we'd crushed every target: record client retention, record margins, flawless audits. Even Pierce had said in the last finance call that operations had exceeded every measurable standard. So when the all-hands invite popped up, subject line, "Celebrating our wins," my team was excited. I wasn't naive, but I let myself feel it for one afternoon. I even told Rosa to leave her spreadsheets for once and join the group. At 3 p.m. sharp, we gathered in the main conference room. The projector glowed against the wall, showing one of Landon's ridiculous PowerPoint decks full of stock photos and fake enthusiasm. The title slide said, "The future is collaborative." I should have known then. Landon stood front and center, that smug ease in his stance like a man who's never been questioned in his life. Pierce hovered behind him, expression unreadable. Mira from HR was off to the side, phone in hand, pretending to take notes but really filming reactions. "We've had a historic quarter," Landon began, voice syrupy with false humility. "And that's thanks to each and every one of you." A pause, practiced for applause. People clapped politely. He smiled wider. In times like these, leadership has to make tough but visionary decisions. We're entering a new phase, one where compensation reflects not just performance, but shared ownership. The room shifted. I felt it in the air, confusion, then discomfort. So this year, he continued, instead of individual performance bonuses, we're rolling that pool into an equity alignment initiative. Everyone gets stock options. We all grow together. Silence. Someone laughed, thinking it was a setup for a real announcement. It wasn't. Landon clicked to the next slide. A cartoon rocket labeled Team Equity 2025. My stomach dropped. Around me, faces froze mid-smile. Ben stared at the screen like it had punched him. Rosa whispered, "Is this a joke?" I didn't answer. Landon's voice filled the room again, bright and tone-deaf. This way, we're ensuring long-term wealth creation, not just short-term payouts. It's visionary. It's fair. He actually used the word fair. I kept my face neutral, but my pulse was in my ears. He wasn't just taking our money. He was trying to make it sound noble. The CFO chimed in next, all numbers and jargon, explaining how this equity realignment was part of a broader initiative to reinvest in culture. Mira nodded along, eyes darting across the crowd, gauging who would resist. And then, like a knife disguised as humor, Landon said, "And for our top performers, our operations heroes, don't think we forgot you. We've got something special planned. A company dinner next week on us, because celebration doesn't have to be cash to be meaningful." The room let out a hollow laugh. It wasn't just insulting, it was deliberate. Public control disguised as generosity. I didn't look at my team, but I could feel them watching me. They needed a signal, so I gave them none. I sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes locked on Landon's slide, and said nothing, because rage was easy, but silence unnerves them more. When the applause finally came, weak and hesitant, I stood slowly. "Appreciate the update," I said evenly. He smiled, probably thinking I'd accepted it. "Always leading by example," he said. That line sealed it. Later, as people shuffled out, Rosa whispered, "What now?" I told her the truth. "Now? We wait." She frowned, but she understood the undertone. Waiting didn't mean surrender. It meant strategy. That night, when the office emptied, I opened my laptop and checked the employee portal. My name was missing from the eligible payout list. Deleted. My team's names, too. All wiped. That was the moment the switch flipped. They thought they'd humiliated me into compliance, but all they'd done was remove my last reason to protect them. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and felt something dangerous settle inside me. Calm, cold, deliberate. They wanted to call it equity alignment. I called it theft. And theft deserves consequence. I didn't sleep that weekend. I wasn't angry. I was awake with precision. By Sunday morning, I had moved from disbelief to structure. Rage was a waste of bandwidth. I wanted results, and results required documentation. I started with what I knew. Every policy update had a digital footprint, each edit, each timestamp, each approval log. They thought hiding the changes behind equity alignment made them safe, but our document management system recorded everything. I pulled the entire revision history of our compensation folder, exported the logs, and saved them to a private drive under a harmless title, Training Docs, Q4. Then I opened the Ops Integrity folder I'd been building quietly since the first red flag. I started tagging evidence by category: data manipulation, compensation tampering, and internal communications. Within hours, I had a timeline. The first unauthorized comp edit had been made 7 weeks ago. The memo about budget realignment circulated 2 days later. Then came the HR audit, the bonus removal, and the public humiliation. A chain, perfectly traceable. While they were rewriting history, I was indexing it. Monday morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. It wasn't a lie. I was sick of playing loyal to a system that treated loyalty as weakness. I worked from my kitchen table, coffee gone cold beside me, drafting a list of exit variables: legal, financial, team readiness, client alignment, timing. I didn't intend to walk out alone. Not this time. By noon, I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in a year. Elena Torres, CEO of Core Path Logistics, our biggest competitor. She'd tried to poach me once, back when things at our firm still felt salvageable. I'd turned her down out of misplaced integrity. Now that same integrity felt like a weapon I could finally use properly. I sent her a message with 3 words. "Still interested?" She replied within minutes. Always. The next hour was a blur of encrypted calls and cautious questions. Could she take a team? Yes. Could she move fast? Faster than I'd expect. Could she guarantee autonomy? Absolutely. She'd even offer relocation stipends and client transition support. It was everything I'd hoped my own company would one day provide, and everything they'd chosen not to. That afternoon, Landon scheduled a vision sync meeting. I accepted. He came in late, as usual, fake humility wrapped around arrogance. "Sara," he said, "we need to start delegating some of your responsibilities to newer leadership. It's time for you to focus on the big picture." I almost laughed. Delegation meant replacement. I asked, "Which responsibilities exactly?" He glanced at his notes. Client transitions, internal metrics oversight, vendor coordination. My entire department. "It's a trust exercise," he said, as if betrayal were a form of yoga. I nodded once, smiled like I understood, and made a mental note of every word. By the time he left, I'd already decided the timeline. 3 weeks. That was enough to gather the last of the evidence, prepare my team, and orchestrate a clean departure. I wasn't going to burn the place down. I was going to leave it hollow, uninhabitable, a shell of itself. That night, I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started sketching the outline. Each box represented a step: data backup, team readiness assessment, legal clearance, client communication plan. At the bottom, I wrote one word in capital letters: execute. I didn't need revenge that screamed. I needed revenge that signed contracts. By Wednesday, I had everything labeled, time-stamped, and hidden in plain sight. They thought they'd stolen my bonus. What they didn't realize was that they'd paid for their own collapse. The first person I tested was Rosa. She'd been with me since the beginning, loyal to a fault. The kind of employee who double-checked invoices on holidays just to protect the department's reputation. We were reviewing a vendor update when I said casually, "If you had the chance to start over somewhere that actually respected the work we do, would you take it?" She didn't even look up from her screen. "You mean if they paid what we earned and didn't gaslight us every quarter? I'd pack tonight." That was all I needed to hear. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, a thread of relief unwound. I moved carefully after that, one conversation at a time, never pushing, only listening. Ben was next, methodical, cautious, the team's moral compass. I mentioned the new equity initiative, pretending to seek his perspective. He leaned back, jaw tight. "They're laundering bonuses through stock options. It's theft with a motivational poster." I didn't correct him. I just noted it. Nina and Leo came later, both younger, still idealistic enough to think hard work might change a system. But even they had stopped smiling in meetings. Leo told me he'd applied for a home loan that week, only to realize his projected bonus had been erased from his income verification. He laughed bitterly. "I'm working 12 hours a day so the CFO can get another watch." Nina stayed quiet until everyone left, then whispered, "If you leave, I'm coming with you." Their words weren't desperate. They were resolved. The betrayal had unified us in a way no leadership retreat ever could. Still, I didn't reveal my hand. Not yet. They needed stability while I built the exit. We started having after-hours strategy syncs, disguised as workflow reviews. We met in the unused break room with the flickering light, laptops open, pretending to debug scheduling software while quietly documenting discrepancies. Every policy edit we found went into a shared offline folder under the label Training Archive. It was the digital equivalent of a survival kit. By the second week, we had mapped every manipulation: commission shortfalls, delayed reimbursements, fabricated efficiency metrics that justified budget cuts. None of it could stand in daylight. Meanwhile, Landon strutted through the floor with the smug serenity of a man who believed the revolt had already been crushed. I smiled when he walked by. Let him think I'd accepted defeat. It made me invisible, and invisibility is the most dangerous power in a collapsing hierarchy. What he didn't know was that my team's small talk had turned tactical. Rosa had started saving email threads. Ben mirrored our client folders. Nina backed up vendor contracts on her personal drive. They weren't employees anymore. They were witnesses. Late one evening, as we packed up, Leo said quietly, "Feels like something's coming, doesn't it?" I nodded just once. "We're preparing for weather." He smiled faintly, understanding. That was the moment the shift became irreversible. They no longer worked for the company. They worked for me, and they didn't even realize the difference. By the time HR would figure out what that meant, it would already be too late. The timing had to be surgical. The board's investor demo was scheduled for Thursday morning, and Landon was set to present our new efficiency platform, a system I had personally designed, maintained, and quietly locked with authentication protocols only I controlled. He thought it was his victory lap. To me, it was the perfect stage. I spent the week polishing the illusion: system dashboard spotless, metrics flawless, every data stream appearing compliant. Behind it all, I created a mirrored test environment, identical in structure but stripped of the manual interventions my team and I had been performing for months to keep operations running smoothly. The live system was an illusion of perfection. The test version revealed the truth. Thursday arrived with the usual pageantry. Investors filled the conference room while remote participants joined on Zoom. Landon walked in confident, Pierce at his side, Mira smiling like someone who'd already rehearsed the post-demo applause. I sat near the back, notebook in hand, invited as a technical observer. Landon opened his presentation with his usual arrogance. "This quarter, operations has achieved a 99% uptime rate," he said, "thanks to our leadership-driven optimization program." Leadership-driven. Those words almost made me laugh. As he clicked through the slides, I logged into the mirrored system from my phone under the secure admin key, synced it to the demo projector's feed, and waited. At exactly 9:47 a.m., when he transitioned to the live metrics dashboard, I flipped the switch. The fake perfection vanished. The real data streamed in, uncleaned, unfiltered, raw. Delivery delays, routing errors, vendor payment freezes, all the numbers they had. Falsified now glared in red across the screen. For a few seconds, silence. Then a murmur rippled through the room. Landon froze, pointer in midair. Pierce leaned forward, squinting. "Sarah, what's happening?" he asked, voice suddenly tight. I looked up, calm. "Looks like the system's showing real performance data," I said. "Perhaps the automation wasn't as self-sufficient as reported." One of the investors spoke first. "You mean these reports were altered?" Landon tried to recover. "Of course not. There must be a technical error." He turned toward me, desperate. "Can you fix this?" "Nothing to fix," I said evenly. "That's the data you paid for." The tension broke like glass. Questions erupted. The chat feed on the conference screen filled with investors asking for documentation, audit logs, compliance reports. Pierce's face drained of color. Landon stammered something about ongoing calibration. But it was over. I stood, closed my notebook, and said, "If you need clarity, check your inbox. I've sent the complete audit trail to the board." Then I walked out, leaving behind a room that sounded like a sinking ship. Alarms, arguments, scrambling feet. In the elevator, my phone buzzed. 6 messages from Rosa, 2 from Ben, 1 from Elena. The subject line from CorePath read simply, "Ready for confirmation." I typed back one word, "Go." By noon, every member of my team had submitted their resignations, each one clean, courteous, effective immediately. Attached were client transition files, vendor handoffs, and contract summaries, proof that we were professionals to the end. By 2:00 p.m., half the company's logistics clients had already requested meetings with CorePath. Landon's demo had turned into an autopsy, and I didn't need to stay to watch. I'd already seen the cause of death. By Monday, the building felt like a mausoleum. My badge still worked, but the halls were silent, stripped of their usual noise. The new interim manager, some desperate analyst pulled from finance, sat in my old office like a ghost in borrowed clothes. I walked past without a glance. The board had already suspended Landon and Pierce pending investigation, and Mira's resignation hit the wire before noon. It wasn't vengeance, it was math catching up. Systems don't forgive manipulation, they simply reveal it in time. Meanwhile, my team was thriving at CorePath. The transition was seamless. Clients followed us naturally, not out of rebellion, but trust. We didn't poach. We offered competence, and competence is magnetic. Rosa's department hit its first milestone within 72 hours. Ben built a new analytics dashboard that made our old one look prehistoric. Nina sent a message the first night that just said, "I slept for 10 hours straight." For the first time in years, I did too. I unpacked my few personal items. A photo of my family, a chipped mug, the same yellow legal pad now filled, with crossed-out plans, and placed them on a real desk, solid wood, not particle board. Outside my new office window, the city looked the same, but I didn't. I wasn't the quiet architect anymore. I was the blueprint. When I finally posted to LinkedIn, I didn't write a speech or name names. I just uploaded a photo of my coffee and wrote, "Integrity scales better than spin." Then I closed the app. Looking back, I've realized revenge isn't always about destruction. It's about restoration. What I did wasn't a grand war. It was balance returning to a system that forgot who built it. For years, I believed that loyalty would protect me, that performance spoke louder than politics. But I learned that silence, without boundaries, invites exploitation. The truth is, most workplaces aren't run by villains. They're run by people who let ego outrun empathy. When they forget that leadership is a contract, not a crown, consequences follow. My revenge wasn't rage. It was clarity. I didn't ruin them. I simply stopped shielding them from the results of their own choices. That's what most of us need to understand. Walking away with evidence, integrity, and peace is often the sharpest strike you can deliver. There's a fine line between forgiveness and foolishness. Sometimes forgiveness is self-liberation, but sometimes silence is the sharpest knife. The goal isn't to hurt anyone, it's to stop letting them hurt you. Success, stability, and self-respect are the quietest forms of power. How to get started today. Document, don't react. If you're being disrespected or undercut at work, start keeping records. Facts protect you when opinions fail. Invest in your network. Build relationships outside your company. Mentors, peers, allies. Loyalty to yourself starts with options. Update your portfolio or resume. Every update is a reminder that your value travels with you, not your employer. Redefine revenge. It's not about burning bridges, it's about walking across them first. If this story hits something personal, drop a comment and tell me what moment resonated with you. Share it with someone who's quietly rebuilding their confidence. And if you're still watching, subscribe. Let's keep learning how to turn corporate chaos into quiet power.